So what is our agenda is like today we'll be discussing about what is variable and what are the different data types that supports as part of Java. Okay. So we understand what is Java and what are the different components that we have inside the Java. And we saw the installation, downloading, installation and setting up the class path. And we are ready with the IDE Eclipse also, which is installed on our machines. So today we'll be discussing about the important thing is like variables, the basic things, variables and data types. We'll understand what are those things and why do we use them. Okay. So when we consider, if I ask you to do some task, okay, for example, I want to do some calculations on a particular number. Okay. So some numbers are given here. I want to do the calculations. Okay. If I ask you to do this calculation, so what you do is like, so in case if you take mathematics, basic mathematics, so we should have something to hold that value, right? So if I say 10, I'm asking you to do the calculation of 10 and 20. Okay. But in generic way, we understand, right? Okay, there is some value that we have to add it. But how do we make the system to understand? Okay. System to understand is like we have to consider these things when we are working with the system. Okay. So that is nothing but memory. And we can call it as like storage area. And do some, we have to apply some logics. Okay. So logic, we should have some logic or we will use some operators and then we are going to do the logic. Okay. But here you see, there are like memories, there are different types of memories. We have like RAM, okay, RAM and ROM, random access memory and read-only memory. Okay. So here storages, we have like some set of storages. We can say in case of Java, we have like class area. And here we have like method area. Okay, so then we can say that heap, stack. Okay, so other native methods. Native method that should be stored in the native area. Okay. So here in this case is like if I ask you to do some calculations, you need some memory and you need a storage area. So is it lots of like language, Java language that it's going to use some memory. Okay. So and logic is like we have to apply the logic. What is that? If you want to do the addition of two numbers, then we have to use this plus operator. Okay. So subtraction we'll be using minus. Multiplication we'll be using star. Okay. So likewise we'll be using this method, this operators for doing some set of actions. Okay. So now it's like where do we store these values? Where do we store these values? We are going to store this value in some of the containers. What containers? Those containers are called variables. Okay. X is equals to 10 and Y is equals to 20. Then do the summation of these two. Okay. So this will be stored. Let us take, there is another variable Z. Okay. That is equals to X plus Y. Okay. So what are this X, Y, Z? So X, Y, Z, these are like variables. Okay. So we are going to store the values in it. So these are called variables. So this contains a value. Okay. It's a container. It's kind of like a box and we are putting the product inside it. So that's nothing but, so whenever we are going to create some variables, so here the space will be allocated. For example, so this is a space and let us take, these are the variables. Okay. X and Y and Z. Okay. So this is simple example that I'm showing you here. Like this values will be referring to the, only these variables will be referred by the referred to these values, and these values are referred being referred by the variables. Okay. So here we have added this, and this value will be stored in Z. Okay. Addition of X plus Y is stored in Z. So this is how actually it's going to categorize. Okay. So all the variables, all this, like, it's all like we have a different set of areas wherein the variables will be stored. If we are working on this method in a particular local methods, the scope of that variable will be like local. So if we define the class variables at class level, the scope of those variables will remain common for all the methods that we are using as part of the classes. Okay, so we'll discuss about what is instance variables, what is local variables and all. But here you see that if we are defining a variable, so we are trying to store some value in it. Okay, so now we are clear with the variables. Okay, what are variables? Variables will keep changing its value. Okay, sometimes it's like, it keeps changing its value whenever we assign some x is equals to 10. For the first time, I'm assigning some value, and here I'm trying to reassign the value. That's nothing but x is equals to. So based on my requirement, I'm going to change the value. Okay, so x is equals to some 40. Specify t, what is the output of it? Now that is equals to x plus y. So this value is like overridden. This is removed and this is considered here. So that's nothing but the variable. We are just trying to store some value in a particular location. Okay, location or else a container. Okay, so we call them as like a variable. Okay, are you clear with this, guys? So we'll see some examples here. So I'm just going to show you example. Here I'm going to create a class. Okay, class is a container. Okay, it's kind of like a container. It will have all the data members. Okay, what is the structure of the class? This we are going to again discuss about it, but basic structure I'm going to show you how exactly we have. Okay, so this is a class. Okay, so inside this class, what are we going to have is like, we are going to have, okay, let me write it down directly in this class. Instance variables. Okay, the variables which are specified at class level. Okay, not inside any of the methods. Okay, so those variables are called instance variables. So here we are going to have static variables also. We'll discuss about what is static and all. I'm just talking about like what exactly the class contains. Okay, instance block, static blocks, main method, then we have methods, local variables. So whatever variables we specified within the methods, those are called local variables. Okay, and then basically we have the important thing is constructor. Okay, we have a try, catch, finally blocks. Okay, so for now we can see that we have a class, and within that class it's kind of a container. Okay, class is a container. Class will contain instance variables, static methods, instance blocks, static blocks, then constructor, main method, methods, local variables, try, catch, finally blocks. Okay, so we have like inner classes also. So these are like different things that we have inside the classroom. Okay, so all these things will have these details. So other containers also we have like kind of interfaces. Interfaces will have only variables as well as like abstract methods. Okay, so abstract methods. So let's go and create a simple class with some logic in it. Okay, so with some logic in it, with the help of like, we are going to create some variables and we are going to store some value. After that, we'll perform some action on them. So here I'm going to create saying that simple class. As we discussed here, I'm going to specify some instance variables. Otherwise, we can directly take main method. So JVM, so there are two things, guys. One is like, we have this program written, but during the compilation, JVM will look for the main method. Okay, so this is the first point, and second point is like, During the execution, this the JVM will look for the main method and it will execute that one. Okay. So if you don't find this one at this compile level, so what it does is like it's going to like it's not going to recognize, this class is not recognized until unless we have the main method. Okay. So I'll show you the difference here. I'll write some program. Okay. So I've just created a method. So I'm just creating a generic method called main. So inside this, I'm going to put a is equals to int a is equals to 20. So integer type. Okay. So we'll discuss about what are the data types that we have and what are the sizes of it. So next b is equals to 20. Let me specify like this. Int is equals to 10 int c. Okay. So c is equals to a plus b. Okay. So to print this output, we are going to use system.out.println. So this is like system is a class and this is a method, and within that method we have a println method. So this method will help you to print the value on the console. Okay. So here I'm going to write value of c is plus c. Okay. So we'll talk about why are we using this plus c. So because strings, if we add something to the string, okay, so it's nothing but if you want to display something on this console, this is an integer value and you want to print this one onto the console. What values what we are going to print on the console is like, so all the types, boolean, integer, string. But during this println only accepts the string. So that is the reason why we are just appending this value. You can see this is the method description. It is given here. You can see that it's going to take this value. Okay, string is the value that it's going to consider. So that is the reason why we are just using plus symbol to add the value to this string. Okay, we'll discuss about why do we use this plus and what are the other methods that we can use as part of converting the value from integer to the string. Okay, any other value, any other primitive data types. Okay, we'll talk about primitive data types, how do we handle the strings and all in the later classes. Now, when I try to execute this, you don't find this. Here you can see there is no Java application that we can execute. Okay, so it's not showing up. How do we write the class? How do we write the code here? You see, just I have created a class and I have written a method here. Method inside that method, I'm writing some logic. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this into a main method. Okay. What is the signature of the main method? Is like public static void main string, and we have to pass some arguments in it. Okay. So anything we can write. So here I'm writing arguments. So now you see, when I right click on this, you can see run as Java application. Okay. Until unless this JVM. So internally what happens is like when we write this class, JVM is the, it's kind of like an application, Java virtual machine. So what it does is like, as we discussed, it's going to compile that code. Okay. So it's going to compile this class and it's going to generate the dart class files. Okay. So I'll show you how this dart class file look into it. So that's nothing but the bytecode. Okay. So the bytecode. I'll just run this program. Not save it. Over here we are missing the argument, so that is the reason why it was not displaying this application. Okay, let me execute this. Now you see what is this? Value of C is 30. Okay, so here the actual operation is done. Okay, so now what we have defined here is like we have defined integer int data type. Okay, int data type is like it will accept the value of. See, you can see that only it's like it's going to accept the whole numbers, not decimal points of it. Okay, so how do we consider decimal point? If you have any decimal point, how do we consider? If you have like this much of value that we have here, so how do we consider? So all these things we are going to discuss in detail when we discuss about the data types. But here you can see that we are discussing about the variables and how do we define those variables within the method and what is the operation that we can perform on them. Okay, so here I'm performing a simple operation C is equal to A plus B. So this is nothing but I've defined a variable A, B, C, and I'm performing some operations on it and storing the value into C and displaying that value on the console. Okay, so let me just increase the font, guys. So is it visible now?
Yes, Shrikant.
Yeah. So now we have just discussed about the variables. So variable is like a container, the value. So here what we are doing is like we are just storing some value into A, and we are storing some value into B, and then we are performing some action and storing that value into the C. Okay, the output is stored into C. That's nothing but the result is stored into C, and we are trying to display that result as part of like the program execution. Okay, so this is about the variables. Now we'll talk about like what are the data types that we have. Okay. So we'll discuss about the data types that we have. And what are the data types that Java supports, and what are like data types which is not considered as like a data type in the Java, that we'll be discussing here. Okay. So let me pull this out here. You can see. So data type in Java, we don't call anything kind of like, data types. We call them as like primitive data types or non-primitive data types. Okay. So it is categorized, like data types are categorized into two. That is primitive data type and non-primitive data type. So we'll talk about like primitive data type first, then after we'll go to the non-primitive. Okay. So in primitive data type, we have two types. One is like Boolean and then it's like numeric. Okay. So Boolean will have only a Boolean. This is nothing but this is a class actually, wrapper class, what we call. So Boolean. So inside that you can see there is a Boolean data type. Okay. So what is the size of it and how does we store the value, that we'll discuss in detail. Okay. So numeric and the Boolean is like it has only one child in it. So in numeric we have two childs. One is character, another is like integer. So in character we have only char primitive data type, and numeric we have like integral. Okay. So integral we have like integer and floating point. Again in this integral we have integral and floating point. In that inside that we have another branch of. You can say this is like kind of a child that we have. Integer will have like byte, short, int, long. Okay. So this has like a different memory. Okay. So whenever we are considering, as we discussed here, so I'm trying to store some value here, right? So you can see I'm trying to store some value here. Int A is equals to 20, B is equals to 10. Okay. Let us take, I want to store this size, like more number of more number of values in it. The size would be increased here. Now you see there is an error. It says like it cannot fit into it. Literal of type int is out of range. Okay, because its size is defined there. Okay, it's like its size is confined to some limit. So if it is exceeding that, we have to take the another data type. Okay, we'll discuss about that, of what data type that we have to use. But here you can see in integer we have 4 types of data types. That is nothing but primitive data types: byte, short, int, long. In floating point we have 2 types of primitive data types. That is float and double. Okay. So what is the default size of it, and what is the size of the storage, how this will be stored, that we'll discuss here in this table. So Boolean, you can see this is like default value is like false, and it will occupy only 1 bit. Okay, 1 bit. So if we are talking about like 1 bit, let me just hold this paint. So here byte is like it will have 8 bits of memory. Okay, so how the data will be stored in terms of memory? What is that computer understands actually? Okay, it doesn't understand what is A, what is B, what is C, what is the symbol that you are using, but it will understand only zeros and ones. Okay, so here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so this is nothing but 8 bits. That is 1 byte. 1 byte of data will be stored here. Okay, so how it will be stored? 0, 1, again 0. It depends on like the value that actually. So you must be aware of this, right? So how do we get the value of like how do we do the LCDs or no? I mean, like when we are trying to find out what is the actual size of this 8, okay, what is the actual binary number of this? So what we do is like we are going to divide it by 2. Okay, So output will be considered over there, and we are going to do some like kind of like, it's like a simple math. So it will be like 2 to the power of 8, 2 to the power of. So likewise, what it does is like it's going to produce this value zeros and ones. So only computer will understand zeros and ones. So in case of this, when we are trying to store some value, like if you want to store some value of 8, so what is the value of 8 is like 1000. Okay, so that is like it's a value of 8. So it's like 2 to the power of 4. Okay, 2 into 2 into 2, 2 into 2 into 2. So likewise, what it does is like it's going to divide that value with 2, and then it's going to produce this output. That output is nothing but it's going to store the value in the form of like zeros and ones. Okay, so here we have like 8 bits, and 1 byte is equal to 8 bits. So likewise, we have like MBs and GBs are terabytes that we are going to define. Okay, so it's like megabytes or gigabytes or terabytes or bytes. Okay, so in likewise, the data will be stored. Okay. So now when we consider Boolean, it's going to occupy only 1 byte. That's nothing but it is like a single space over there. Okay. So only one part of the memory it will be occupied. Character, it's take 2 bytes. That's nothing but 2 into. So 2 bytes. Now if I say 2, so how many bits of memory it will occupy? It says that 2 bytes. 1 byte is 8 bits. Okay, let me go here and show you. Character will occupy 16 bits of memory. Okay, so it's going to occupy 16 bits of memory. So likewise, you can see start will occupy 2 byte. Yeah, byte will occupy only 1 byte. That's nothing but 8 bits. Here 16 bits. Then here 4 into. This is nothing but how much memory it will occupy?
32 bits.
16 to 16 plus 16, 32 bits. Here long
64 bits.
Yes, 64 bits. Here 4, again it's like 32. Again it's like 64. Okay. So likewise, what it does is like it's going to Java is going to occupy that space. Okay. Now we go and try to do some set of like actions or operations on certain variables that we have defined here. Okay. So here I'm defining int a is equals to 20 and int b is equals to 10 and c is equals to some value. Okay. A plus b. Okay. So here I'm going to create some other variables. D is equals to C. Now it's like it's getting confused, like the final literal type. It is treating as like a integer. Okay, out of range, integer out of range. So if we are defining long or float, then we have to specify it is a long. Okay, so we have to use the notation called L at the end. So now it's going to consider this is a long primitive data type. Okay, if we don't define this one, so what is it going to do is like it's going to throw the error. Okay, so still it is treating as like a int, and it says like it's throwing the error int literal of type int is out of range. So for this reason we have to specify small l or capital L. Okay, so it doesn't care like what is like case sensitive. Okay, so it's not like you can use uppercase or lowercase. So likewise, we have another thing. So if you define int a, some e is equals to 23.545. Now it's going to throw the error because only int will accept the mismatch, cannot convert the double to int. Okay, it's like treating this value as like a double. Okay, what is the double? What is the double? Double is a primitive data type. It's going to accept. See here, this is the value it's going to accept. We have a decimal points. Okay, so if you want something to be stored as part of a variable of data type float or double, okay, float or double, or if you want to store them as like a decimal points, okay, so then what you have to is like you have to use the float or double for the data types. Okay, so here now you see the error will be gone when I define it as like a float e, and here I'm going to specify f. Okay, so if I don't specify f, so it's going to consider this one as like a double. Okay, I will discuss about what is double, what is the difference between float and double, what is the difference between int and long. This terms showing like these are the data types that we are going to use. Okay, so what are the other data types that we have? Like Boolean, Okay. By default, what is the value? If I don't define anything here, what is the value of boolean? B is like, it's going to, okay, we have a B already. We're going to use boolean. What is the default value of it is false. Okay. So it will show you the false when you try to print the output of it. So here I'm going to specify character. Character will accept only one character at a time. Okay. So one character at a time. For example, I'm going to specify C. So here byte, it's going to accept only one byte. That's nothing but 8 bits of memory. If I say something like this, now it's going to throw the error. So it will say that the type mismatch cannot convert into 2 bytes. Okay. So it is treating this value as like an integer and it's not able to convert this particular value as like a byte. Okay. So when I specify this value, it will accept it. Okay. So because it does not fit fit into that particular memory size. Okay. So short also, it's kind of like I'm going to specify 34. So it's like smaller values. If we are using smaller values, then we can go with byte or short. If you are using longer values, okay, longer value in the sense, if you have any values which is like greater than the value, the size which is specified for this byte or short or character. Okay. So character. So in that case, what we do is like we are going to use this integer longer. So it's kind of like a bucket. For example, you see, so you need to store some water. Okay. So you need to store some water. So what you do is like, if you want only glass of water, you'll be taking only glass. Okay. So this is nothing but a glass of water. So you need a big container, like we have a bubble water. Okay. So there is a big container. Inside that container, we have a lot of water. So now this water is like, it should be sufficient enough to supply for number of people. It's like number of people are increased. So then what is happening here is like, we are going to take the big container. That's nothing but C. So if you want a smaller value, then you can define this one as like a short. Okay, short in the sense. So here you are going to store only. Let us take we have a value range of only from 125 to 128 to 125. In that case, what it is like, you will take this one. Okay, so 25. So if you have certain big value, so let us take like we have some 36,000 or more than that. In that case, we are going to use this integer, and we have a defined set of sizes. I'll show you like from what is minimum size and what is maximum size. Here you can consider this one is like a bigger container. Okay. So here you can store the values like this. Okay. It depends on like, this is like a short. When you have a smaller values, you can go with short, int or byte. So when we have a longer values, we can go with int or long. Then we have a still long value, then we can go with the long. Okay. We have large value. In that case, we can go with the long. So if you have some decimal values, and this decimal value is like a smaller decimal value, if you want to consider the precision, like 2 to 3 places of precision, you can go with the float. And if you have a longer precision, it should have like epsilon values, then we can go with the W. Okay. So I'll show you what are that spaces that we have, that it does actually occupies, and what is the minimum value and maximum values in it. Okay. So let's consider some example. N is equals to. Okay, now you see these are the values it is accepting. So let's create another program to find out what is the minimum and maximum values of it. Create a double D. So here I need to specify it as like a D. Okay, if I don't specify it as like a D, still it will consider. Okay, so now we'll find out what are the sizes of it. Okay, so for this we have some other wrapper classes, which are like wrapper classes are like converting from primitive data type to object. Okay, we'll discuss what are those wrapper class and all little later. Okay, so we'll try to find out what are the sizes of it. Value So just try, I'm just trying to write the content. I'll just stop this. Okay, let me put it as like min and max so that you can see this one. Okay. So now you can see min and max value of int data type. Okay. I'll say okay, int we can call it so that it will be visible to you. So min and max value of integer is like integer min and max. So here I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it to get for the rest of the classes. So first I'll start with byte and short. So every primitive data type we have a wrapper class. Okay, wrapper class that will help you to convert the primitive data type to the object that we discussed little later. Okay, long float double. Okay, so here we have to use short. So this should be a byte of 8 integer long. You're not defining character and boolean because character will accept only one character at a time. Okay, this is character primitive data. Boolean is like it will accept only true or false. So that is the reason why we are not specifying that. So long integer and float we have some set of values. It will take the range. Okay, so and double also it will take the range. So that is the reason why we have this wrapper classes one. Go and execute it. We'll see the ranges here. See, you can see. Height it's going to accept minimum is like minus 128 and 127. So short is like minus 32,768 to 32,767. Okay. So for example, you see short will accept like what is the value that it's going to accept? 32,767. Okay, we don't have any other error. Okay, so now I say 8. Now you see it is exceeding the limit. So if I'm specifying some value which is like short 32,768. So now it is like exceeding the limit and it's saying that this value cannot fit into this. Okay, cannot convert into the short. That is the reason why it is throwing the error. Okay, the same value if I specify here, so now it will accept. Okay, so now it's kind of like a bigger bucket I'm trying to take when I have like exceeding the value 32,767. If I exceed 767, then it's going to throw the error. But here you can see 767. But here in this case, if you have an integer value, to define this value here, it's accepting. But when I say 478, now you see we got the error because it is exceeding the limit. This is maximum limit. It can accept the value. But the same value, if I'm trying to add it here, so it will not throw any error. Or 99 something. But we have to define it as like because still it is treating as like an integer. So that is the reason why it is saying that the range is out of it is going out of range. Only the thing is like we have to put the notation L. So it will consider this is a long value. Okay. So long is like, it can accept the values till this set of numbers. So you can see what is the minimum and maximum. Okay. So here I'm going to just copy it and I try to paste it as a output. Okay. So this is the output of this program. So we'll discuss, we'll go back to this sheet again. Now you can see what are the primitive data types that we support is like, these are the primitive data types: Boolean, character, byte, short, int, long, float, and double. Okay. So you need to remember this one, guys. And what are the wrapper classes that we have? Like for every integral data type, we have primitive data type, we have a wrapper classes. Okay. So Boolean and character is also a wrapper class, which will convert this particular primitive data type into the object. Okay, we'll see why do we use that and when it is required. So whenever it is required, we'll be using the wrapper classes. Okay. So now you saw that what is the default value and default size of it. So when we don't define any value to this particular variable, for example, if I am defining this variable as like, let me take these values, there's these variables and try to get the default values of it. Okay. Values of don't have anything defined here, so I'm just removing everything. So far, we'll just define this one at the class level. So this we have to define it as static, guys. I'll tell you why do we use the static and all. What is the use of the static? But for now, just look into this. What are the default values of this particular data type? Okay. So we did not define any value to the variable, right? So we'll see what are the default values. I'll try to copy it. Char. We'll try to execute this and see the output. You can see what is the value. So character is like, it's not showing up any character here. It's kind of like a symbol it is defining here. Only one character at a time. What is the default value of Boolean? It is false. Byte 00, like byte 0, short 0, int 0. We missed out something long. So what is this? Long is also 0. Float is 0.0 and double is 0. If you don't define anything here, okay. For example, you see, I'm going to add the value. Okay. So in plus by plus sh. So what is the value? So here you can see 0, 0 plus 0 plus 0. Okay, if you define some value here, 1, then what happens? It's going to consider this value. So if I define 0, so integer is 0, the output should be 2. Okay, so these are the default values. If you don't define value to this variable of different data type. So it's going to take the default value. Okay. So earlier it was like it was not allowed there, but now Java has introduced this thing so that the default values will be allotted during the memory. Okay. I mean to say that whenever we are getting some memory for that variable, right? So it's going to check for the data type. If you don't define the data type, it's not going to consider the variable. So variable of data type we have to consider. This is the data type and this is a variable. So now what it does is like during this compilation time, JVM, it's going to look for these things of I mean like will be looking for these things. Okay. So if you define only the data type and if you don't define the variable, so it's going to throw the error. Okay. So it is asking you like what kind of variable that you are going to specify here for this data type. Okay, I'm going to specify this one as like ch. So now it's accepting. So it's kind of like what is the syntax of defining a variable? So we should have a data type and we should have a variable name defined here. Okay, so basic syntax is like data type and variable name. Okay, value. So if you don't define any variable here, value here, so it's going to take the default value. If you define some value, so then it's going to consider this value. Okay. Are you clear with this, guys? What is data type and what is variable? Okay, it's kind of like a container. Variable is like a container, and this is like a quantity or the type of data that you want to store. For example, if you want to store, I'll give a simple example. If you want to store the water, what do? So you are going to take a container which can store the value. For example, you can take the cans or you can take the bottles. Okay, but the same thing is like if you want to store some grains, what you do is like you are going to take the bag. Okay, bag is like a kind of a data type, and the grain would be like what kind of bag would be like a variable, and the grain would be like what kind of data that you want to store. That is nothing but what kind of product that you want to store into that bag. So that is nothing but the data type. Okay, so this is the difference between data type and variable, and we'll be defining the variable in this way. Okay, and this is nothing but if you are defining any variable outside of any method, outside of the methods inside the class. Okay, so this is a class and we are defining the variables here. These are instance variables. If you are defining anything inside the method, this is called local variable. Okay, so local variable. And these are instance variables. So we'll discuss about what is static and why do we use the static variable. Okay, instance variables. So just remember these two things. So instance variables can be accessed by the methods which are defined within the class. For example, I am defining a method here, public void test. So I can use these variables. Okay. So okay, now you can see you can use this variables. Anywhere within the class. If you are specifying int a here, this is a local variable. Okay, so I cannot access this one outside of that method. If I specify a here, so it will throw the error. Please define this one as a create a local variable. So it will say create local variable or create a constant. Okay, constant is nothing but it's going to get created here. Okay, so here you can see this is the constant. Okay, if you are removing this one, so then it will throw the error. So local variable, the scope of that local variable is within the method. What is the scope of the instance variable? Throughout the class. Okay, so we'll see how do we access this instance variable. So I'm just to show you the example. I've just created this set of variables with different data types. I'm putting the static because we are accessing those variables in the static context. Okay, so we'll discuss about why do we use this static and what is this public static void main method, and how do we execute, how do we create the object, how do we execute the program through the object, and how do we create the methods. All these things we'll be discussing. Okay, so for today I'll be creating a program last addition, right? Last addition. Now, just tell me, like, I want to create a simple program so that it will perform the addition operation. Can you tell me? Very basic program, guys. We are trying to understand. Are you guys there? Are you able to hear me?
Can we write as int a, suppose a is equal to
Okay.
some value?
Some 100. Okay.
Yeah. And int b is equal to some 200.
Okay. Now I want this values to be stored in a value itself. Like I don't want to create the third variable. Can I do this?
Yes, I think.
A is equals to a plus b. So what happens is like now the value get overridden, right?
Yes.
We'll get the value here and the value will be overridden. That's nothing but we are just not using the other space. So whenever we try to create these variables, there are like, how do we create the variables here? See? So if it is of the same data type, okay, now we got the value. If you have a same data type, then it's like not required to create on the next line. Okay, just we can just remove this semicolon, remove this int. Now it is like it will consider these two variables of same data type. Okay, so same data type. Now we can write like this also. A is equals to a plus is equals to b. Okay, so this is another way. So we'll discuss about operators tomorrow. I'll tell you how these operators will be used. Okay, so now you can see the short form of writing this. Okay, so this is same as the statement that we have written here on the line number 7. Okay, so a plus is equals to b is nothing but a is equals to a plus b. We have some shortcuts like this. We can use it for all this set of operators. So if we are trying to use this a is equal to a minus b, then we are going to write like this. See what is the output of it. Okay, so tomorrow we will be discussing about the operators that we are going to use. So we have the different set of operators: unary operator, arithmetic operator, relational operator, bitwise operator, logical operator, ternary operator, and assignment operators. So these are the operators that we have, and we'll be discussing about them tomorrow. Okay, we'll go slowly, guys, for a few days, and once we get the pace for speed up, then we can definitely moving very fast. Okay, so please stop by anything, like if you're not able to understand, and you can stop by and you can ask me the questions. Okay, for today I'll stop it here, guys. Please practice these programs and you can go through the videos, and probably I'll be uploading all these programs on a daily basis. But sorry for this, guys, I got some delay because my credentials are not working out. I need to upload those manual documents also. I'll be uploading each and every document as we discussed during the whatever we have discussed as part of the training. Okay.
Okay, Shrikant, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all. Have a good day.